Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me. You're very welcome, as always. So, I don't normally just go through making videos about my Christmas presents, but this year I got a couple of very special ones. And none of them more interesting and perhaps nostalgic than this one. It's the Roy Huxley, the famous artist. It's his book on the golden years of Matchbox art, or Matchbox box art would be more accurate. It's basically a book about his work for Matchbox starting in 1973 when the Lesney company was set up in London, and all the work he did producing these wonderful and evocative artworks, many of which will be very familiar to some of the viewers, I'm sure. So I thought just have a very quick video today, just flicking through a few of these images and just commenting and showing you some images that you'll remember, I'm sure, that will bring back memories of making models and buying them in your local newsagents or, you know, toy shop or model shop or whatever. And I just thought it'd be nice to flick through this and just get a little bit of nostalgia. So I'm going to zoom you straight in and we'll get straight into having a look at some of these illustrations. Now then, first of all, I have to say that the one on the front, the Lancaster, is a nice picture, but it's not absolutely my favourite and not the most evocative, so I'm going to skip past that and we'll get cracking straight away. So, Roy Huxley, he worked with a chap called, several chaps actually that worked for Matchbox Airfix, a chap called Post. He did some of the illustrations, but Roy Huxley did the vast majority of the ones for Matchbox, and here's one of those very evocative images that comes up very, very early on the intro page, and of course it's the Phantom F4MK Phantom, which is coming in over the Scottish practice ranges, or the Spade Adam range. Actually, I think it was put on one of the boxes. They did change the wording a couple of times on this for some reason, and of course they also changed the box art, but we'll get into that later. So let's just have a little flicky through here. Various acknowledgements. A very interesting book, and I can strongly recommend it to you. People that watch my channel and have seen my Matchbox reviews will have heard me banging on about this guy and saying what a genius I thought he was as an artist. He was so good at capturing the colours, vivid colours, very accurate, in most cases very accurate renditions of the aircraft or tank or ship or whatever it was, or car, and also the way he portrayed them in action. You can see him here. He's actually in his actual studio at home where he did a lot of his work, and a chap called Doug Post. This is this guy here, and Doug Post was, I think, kind of his chap he looked up to, and he did produce some of the Matchbox illustrations himself. This is Roy Huxley here, a very young Roy Huxley. This is Doug Post that did some of the original works that he sort of not emulated, but sort of learned from, I think, as a sort of art form. Anyway, we'll get straight into the pictures that you want to see. So here we go. P51 Mustang, and this is, if I zoom you back a little bit more, you'll see that this is in the book, and it starts talking about various ranges, and straight away it conjures up images of, you know, all of these evocative kits, and this was the first one. So the very first attempt at painting an aircraft, it says. Well, he did a pretty good job of it, didn't he? It was well received by Matchbox, and I was given a further 9 to paint, ready to show off their new plastic kits at the Brighton Toy Fair in 1973. Hawker Fury model had a record number of sales, so they did really well with this. And there, of course, is the Matchbox kit. Many of you will remember, with its classic purple range, purple instructions, 2-coloured scheme in plastic. And then we're off, aren't we? And then we're off to these many memorable images. The Spitfire Mark 9, which we'll come to later. Boeing P-12, the Zero at Pearl Harbor, Dornier Alpha Jet, Focke-Wulf 190, and the Lysander, Gloucester Gladiator, the Cobra helicopter from Vietnam, the BSE Strike Master, of course, based on the Jet Provost, the Hurricane 2C, Northrop Freedom Fighter, and the Dooley Bird P51 Mustang, which we just saw a second ago. So, now, this is very interesting for me because many of you will recall from my own reviews of the Matchbox kits, which I've done many. I did make a comment about this particular one, the Spitfire, and I said I thought it was actually, I didn't think it was Roy Huxley because it was quite a poor illustration. Well, it turns out it is. Wait till you see this. Okay. What he says is, I put this in as part of the Matchbox story, but it is not a very good illustration of a Spitfire. It was the early days and I painted from a model, probably from the Airfix range. Sorry, I've got to laugh because I'm not, you know, taking the mickey or anything, but it's like he's saying, really, this was Airfix's fault, you know. I find it strange because his illustrations were just so damn good, so outstanding, really. They sold these products to me and millions like me back in the day. And I won't read out all these sort of subtext, but it's the comments that go on these which are very interesting. And there's two themes you'll notice from this. One theme is the subject choices and the way that they were depicted, and the second thing is that the way that he was asked to revise, or that the studio who handled the artworks were asked to revise them retrospectively after his beautiful work. And here we have a case in point with the Japanese Zero. So let me just zoom you in for this. The Pearl Harbor A6 M20. And as you can see, he says here basically that this illustration was dropped early because of all the violence, but the kids liked it. Now this is when you could almost say that political correctness started, because these illustrations used to be very, very realistic, and they would show an aircraft, in this case it's attacking Pearl Harbor, December 1941. There's a lot of explosions going off here. One of the ships, I believe it's the Nevada, is capsizing here. And this was very much the sort of thing that youngsters wanted to see. It made these things very animated and very exciting, and it was a very honest depiction of what was happening with these aircraft. Now, later on, and we'll discuss this, I'll keep coming back to this subject, I'm sure, both Airfix and Matchbox and most of these manufacturers sort of de-violenced the images to take out A, explosions and any sort of violence or firing, and B, also in a lot of cases they had to remove any other aircraft, because he comments, I'll show you when we get to it, he comments that some people really believed that if there was two planes in the image on the box art, that they assumed there would be two aircraft in the box. Even if it said Spitfire singular, you know, they assumed that there would be two Spitfires, for example. Absolutely crazy. I mean, this is where the beginning of this current world of stupidity we seem to reside in began. But anyway, let's carry on. So we've got the Zero here, and it goes into talking about each aircraft, which I won't relay because it just takes too long. Let's just concentrate on looking at these lovely images. Here we've got the Lysander followed by the Hurricane. Look at that, Westland Lysander, that's PK007. There we are, look at that, isn't that lovely? And of course that was attacking German columns in sort of May 1940, trying to harass the Germans to help the British and French troops retreat into Dunkirk. Then we've got the the Hurricane 2C, and this is attacking the airfield at Caen, KPK airfield for sure. This is one of the very most popular of the early Matchbox kits, and depicts 87 Squadron Hurricane 2Cs shooting up the German airfield in an intruder patrol. Well, I can tell you it's definitely KPK at Caen airport, and this would be about 1942 probably. Another beautiful one, and then we get another pane of these window pane, so to speak, of these collections. So then we've got the Corsair, which I've done a review on, and the Nat of the Red Arrows, the Harrier AV8A. Now that was not depicted in the UK and Europe like this. It used to be the Harrier rising from the forest, and the British rising from the forest in Germany, and the British RAF markings. So that's actually departure. We'll get to that later, I think. Then we've got the Messerschmitt 109E, BF109E, which is a really beautiful bit of artwork. Again, very dramatic. The Grumman Hellcat here, the F6, and then the Dassault Mirage 3C. Now there's a story here which I'm hoping we'll get into. I don't know if we will, not in terms of detail, but look at that illustration. That is not the one that was on the box of the kits, but it's very close. Let me show you why. If you look very, very closely, you'll see that these Mirages are not carrying any weapons or stores under their wings, but on the box, the original box, it had wing drop tanks underneath, and they were not in the kit. So this was actually the revised artwork where they were sort of I was going to say they photoshopped it out. I don't think they had Photoshop then, but they removed it from the artwork and modified it so it no longer showed things that were not included in the kit. And this happened in a couple of Matchbox kits. It also happened on the Buccaneer S2B. But anyway, we move on. Then we have got, zoom out a little bit, we've got the Messerschmitt 262, which is another beautiful bit of artwork. We've got the Thunderbolts dropping bombs on the French rail yards, the Tempests, we've got the Brewster Buffalo fighting against the Japanese Zeros, not doing too well, and then we've got the Armstrong Whitworth Siskin and the Henschel HS126. Now, we now get in, and by the way, these pages are this beautiful thick pages. Now look, this is where it gets very interesting in terms of this sort of political correctness changes that went on in the sort of 1980s, because here we have an illustration. This is this beautiful bit of artwork he did for the Messerschmitt BF109E, North African colours, and he says, this one turned out well, it has vigour and stands out from the other boxes. It was very popular. It was very disappointing. I was very disappointed when pressure came from some countries to remove the violence and the swastikas to make it more sombre. This kit was a favourite with schoolboys everywhere. And if we zoom in, you can see the later version here, which I'll just show you. That's the original version. You know, it's just shot down a hurricane in the desert, Tunisia probably. This is the later version. No swastika, no shooting down. Suddenly it's over like a river. Completely different bit of artwork. A real shame. It sort of lost all its bite. Not the same thing at all. However, then we've got the F4 Ua Corsair, which is very nicely done, and that's a lovely bit of artwork leaving the US carrier, which has been really, really nice illustration. And then again we have this the same issue where we've got the Hellcat, Grumman Hellcat, with what looks like it's the Battle of Midway for sure. And then he says, this is another example where I had to remove the violence. There was no time to repaint it and I had to paint out the background. Oh no. So we actually had to paint over the background of the original artwork. I've since been commissioned by an enthusiast who was 6 years old at the time to paint it back to its original state. And this is it, look, behind. So he's actually repainted it back to its original state. Isn't that amazing? A 6-year-old, so someone actually slightly younger than me, but not much. And then we've got the same thing all over again with the Messerschmitt 262. This is a good example of the changes to the kits. The main illustration here shows the all-action version, bottom left, without the burning V17. That's one modification. And final painting is on a white sky with all the other aircraft are removed. How disappointing. Isn't that silly? Let's just have a look. So that's the original burning B-17 through the American jet stream. Second one flying through the American jet stream with no burning B-17, and then the final version with nothing at all but the aircraft in the picture. And of course no swastika. So the swastikas are removed for both the later iterations. A bit disappointing. Here we go again. This time it is the P47D Thunderbolts, Republic P47D, bombing the rail yards in France. And this is another painting that disappeared. So when I was asked to remove the violence, I had to repaint it. To paint it from scratch. Oh jeez. Okay, so some of these, obviously these paintings are either lost or they vanished. Another one, this is the Brewster Buffalo. I like this one, he says. It's great and stands out from the background, just what you want from a box top. Shame it had to be repainted to take out the other aircraft. It lost a lot of excitement, as you can see. From this to this. It just becomes very bland, doesn't it? That's disappointing. Anyway, then we've got some more paints. So we've got the Hawk, Starfighter, Skyhawk, Percival Provost, Curtis Kitty Hawk, North American F-86 Sabre, and we've got the Saab Tunnan, and the Curtis Helldiver, Fairy Sea Fox, the Sea Harrier, and then the Dolphin and the Northrop F5B. So, which is later version of the Freedom Fighter. And again, you can see the Skyhawk. Again, we've got quite it's not an overly violent picture apart from the missile he's firing, and then later he has to repaint it landing in this rather boring manner. This is a second issue that I alluded to earlier. This is the Tunnan, the Saab J29F. Now he had to repaint this, and he says this is one that was very colourful, but it was another one that had to be repainted to remove the second aircraft, because people apparently were so stupid that they believed that if there was more than one aircraft in the picture, that they had a right to expect there to be two or more aircraft in the box. Now, I give up, really. You can't make this stuff up. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, then we got. I won't go through every single illustration, but then we've got the Sea Harrier. We've got a couple of versions of this. One that's got the HMS Invincible in the background. Yeah, it is the Invincible. You can tell. And then we've got this sort of more vague version, which is this one, that was actually used later. That's the version with the Invincible in the background. Again, that's conflict, war, you can't have that. A bit silly, isn't it? Now then, we've got the Harrier GR3 here. Very nice. Dassault Mystère. Now here's an interesting one. We talked about the Spitfire earlier. Here is the same one. This painting is a fitting example of the purple range. Difference in style between this painting and that for PK102, which was painted some 10 years earlier, is striking. By the time the all action had been banned, and even background aircraft had to be phased out. Despite this, Roy's portrait of the Mark 9 is classic Huxley style, with a wonderfully soft and sketched background contrasting with a perfectly resolved and detailed metallic looking aircraft. Now that is much nicer than his original attempt at the Spitfire. I think you would agree. It looks absolutely bang on this time. It's a proper Spitfire. The shape looks correct. Much nicer. Much nicer. And then there was some retooling that went on, and they did a Hurricane 2C, and also the Spitfire I just mentioned was retooled as well. Then we go to the orange range. So here we go. Once again, you see here one of the original artworks. So quite a lot of violence, and we're going to get onto this again in a second, where there's quite a few funny stories. We've got the Corsair PK101, and then the BAC Jaguar PK102. Now the 101 has got a backstory which I'll come to in a minute, because that is quite amusing. And then there's the Submarine Walrus. We've got the Hawker Siddeley Buccaneer, and that is not the artwork that was gone with originally, though I think they got from somebody else. Possibly the other chap, was it Doug Cross? I've got his name. Hang on a second. Let's just check that again. Dug post. I think they used dug post if and when they couldn't get what they wanted from Roy or it wasn't available. Dornier Servant, Westland Lynx. I had that kit. Built that one. It's the only helicopter I've ever built, that one. The Junkers Ju-88 and the Hawker Siddeley 125. Now then, here we go. The Corsair A7D, and it said this is one of the last before the paintings were de-violenced, and even I think it might have been a bit overdone. But it is exciting. Now what is odd about this picture, if you check the original, if you go back to my review of that kit, contrary to what the image seems to portray, it is not in fact dropping bombs over Vietnam, which is what it looks like. It's actually dropping bombs on the training range at Valparaiso in Florida, over the Everglades. And it's only when you read it you realise it's quite relatively innocuous and really fairly a harmless thing. It's just a bit of a military exercise, some bomb dropping. But when you were a youngster and you saw the box art, you think, they're bombing the Vietnamese, it's war, I must have it. Not that I'm a warmonger or anything, quite contrary, but it was very exciting, and these images make young boys, you know, this is what sold the product, and this is why they were so successful. And here's the other one that I thought was interesting, which is the Buccaneer. Now, it doesn't actually explain this particular one, but this is not the artwork, the original artwork that was gone with. If you look carefully here, you can clearly see a very nice image of the Buccaneers. I think it's 16 Squadron, I think it is. It were based in Germany at the time, but that's not the image that was gone with. They went with this. The fact that there are no stalls on this aircraft, no weapons or anything like that under the wings. Yeah. However, again, if you go back to my review of the Buccaneer, you'll notice that I mentioned this controversy about, in the image on the box, it has bombs under the wings, which are not included in the kit at all. So that was quite controversial as well. And I think they went with this on the later versions after the around the time of the Chinese/Revell ownership. And there we have it. So it gives you an idea of how controversial it is. Now, if you look at some of these, and there's again some lovely, beautiful illustrations here. And we've got fairy swordfish, we've got the Lightning, the Messerschmitt Bf-110, the de Havilland Mosquito, Hawker Hunters, Saab Viggens, the Douglas Boston, and the Fairchild A10 Thunderbolt, which is when it first came out. Now, an interesting point about these, you've got the Taranto attack with the fairy swordfish, which was very beautifully done, very well illustrated. Then we've got these two Lightnings with their strange overwing fuel tanks. And one thing that is interesting is that the image here isn't quite the same as the one that was on the box, because or is it? There's a shadow here. I don't know if you can make this. I'm going to zoom you in so you can get really close on this. Look very closely here. Now then, looking at this shadow here. On the box art, it's an Avro Vulcan. That is, and it does look like a Vulcan. It's almost like it's been, I don't know, slightly painted out. But there is a shape, and it's flying in that direction. Can you see it? And it's an Avro Vulcan there, triangular shape going that way. And it said that they were actually doing intercept exercises near Singapore against Avro Vulcans. So you can see there's been a bit of fiddling about has gone on with these images, where I don't know whether it was just changes in demand, changes in ownership of the company, constantly wanting these artworks changed back and forth. And very interesting that's actually occurred. De Havilland Mosquitoes. Interesting background. This is where the Mosquitoes are bombing the Gestapo headquarters. And if I remember the box art, I think it was said it was the Gestapo headquarters in Oslo, if I remember correctly. And then we've got the Douglas Boston, this is in the Pacific Theatre, I think. And then you get some of these later images where we've got F-16s, Two-Seat Lightning, Norseman 4, de Havilland Twin Otter, Jaguar T2, the Meteor, Tornado F3, Saab Viggen. And, you know, we go on. Just trying to find now, as we flick through the more interesting ones. And here we are, the red range, the bigger kits. This is where things get really interesting. Saying here that this is one of Roy's favourite paintings because it tells a story of skill and courage. This is when the rear gunner of this Wellington was killed outright instantly in the explosion that is depicted. But they actually managed to get home. And it says here, a shattering explosion ripped into the Wellington, blowing the rear turret off. Sergeant L.F. Williamson was awarded CGM for his courage and flying skills, bringing his battered and crippled aircraft back home. So that is a very memorable bit of artwork, it has to be said. And it's very, very striking on the box. Another striking one, of course, is the F4MK Phantom, and here they are. And interestingly, in this shot, they're not firing their rockets, which they are in the original version of the artwork. So again, a little bit of meddling has gone on. There's an interesting one with the Mitchell, where it actually depicts the original drawings, concept colour sketch, which I'll show you first. Here, that's the original concept colour sketch. Even has the big cannon firing, 75mm cannon firing. And then here is the slightly tamed down, but still pretty action-packed original final production example that was on the box. Very nicely done. And then we're over to the Tomcats. He says he put it on a dark background to really make them stand out dramatically. The light painted grey aircraft. I mean, you look through this back catalogue and it's just gorgeous. It's a feast for the eyes, isn't it? Really, you know. Prowler. Phantom FG1. Chinook. Now this is interesting. Something I've talked about at length: the evolution of the box design. Now this is very, very interesting because he says here, I liked painting the early boxes. They were full of excitement, fighting and action with plenty of speed, smoke and explosions. All very popular with younger modellers. Pressure gradually came from the Scandinavians. Then the Germans, to remove the swastikas and any depiction of violence. Some German outlets were refusing to sell the kits where the Luftwaffe were going down in flames. Oops. You may not believe this, but there are customers who thought the box contained more than one aircraft if shown on the lid, so the second and third planes had to be got rid of as well. Sadly, this led to my having to paint out some of my backgrounds, and a period of half-white box tops followed, designed to emphasise the aircraft, but alas, no excitement. So that explains why you often ended up with these white backgrounds on the box top. Finally, in an effort to boost sales, there was a completely new look to the box top, known to all at Matchbox as the hockey stick design, which is this one, hockey stick shape. This left a narrow rectangular format for the aircraft illustration, with very little room for any background at all. I have to say, I don't understand that. It's awful, horrible design, and definitely did not sell the product to them, I can tell you. Now we get into this, the green range, the really big stuff. I have to say that's a nice painting, but it's not one of Roy's best ones, if I'm brutally honest. But there we go, that's just my opinion. Stranraer, we've got the Privateer, the Sky Raider, and then we get to these massive, the green range, which of course with these 32nd scale kits with the wonderful BF109E, the Spitfire Mark 24, and of course the Dauntless, and the Lysander. De Havilland Tiger Moth, the Sea Venom, and the Puma Helicopter. Says the Green Range was a step up from everything that Matchbox produced until then, and these large 132 scale kits in big boxes demanded striking box art. The result was a very memorable series of side views of the aircraft. And we had the Victor, of course, Big Victor in 1/72. But again, this hockey stick design rather spoiled this nice artwork he did. And then we get onto the airlines, which are really, for me, not so special. And the ships. Yeah, box art for this was over 1 metre long. It's a very nice painting, that. That's the Flower Class Corvette. Firefly, Fletcher, USS Indianapolis, Graf Spee. I mean, he was very good as an artist. He was certainly able to turn his hand to almost everything. And then we get the military vehicles, and we get the iconic Sherman Firefly, the M16 half-track. Both of these are in my collection that I've reviewed and that I've also shown you as finished items. All part of the fun of Matchbox. Here we go again, these two, same again. I've reviewed both of those, and I've also got the finished item. This is one that he's quite annoyed about, I know. This is the Hanomag, and this is the original illustration. We have a Nazi swastika flag on the front of the vehicle, and they are shooting at a Hurricane 2C, strafing them in the desert. And then if you look very, very closely, he later has to produce another version of this, which is completely anodyne. The flag has gone, the aircraft has gone, the action has gone, and it's just lacks all of the dynamism, and he says it's very disappointing. You know, you have got to feel sympathy when somebody's produced such a nice illustration. To water it down for political reasons is just ridiculous, really. We've got the Stuart Honey tank there, and the armoured car, the 232 armoured car here, and the Challenger tank, Challenger 1. And then of course they did classic cars. So I think he quite enjoyed doing cars or something a bit different. Porsche Martini, Jaguar SS 100, the MG TC, the Bugatti Type 59, Surtees TS16, and the Auto Union. That's a nice model, isn't it? I like that one. I don't think I had any of these cars though, actually. Yeah, they got the Tyrrell PK309. That's the 6-wheeler Tyrrell, of course. That's the 78 car, I'm pretty sure. And then we've got the Mercedes SSKL, Aston Martin Ulster, Ulster, I should say. Liquid Moly Porsche 935, Packard Victoria, and the Rolls Royce Phantom Black Diamond. And that brings us to the end of our excellent publication. Other than to say that Roy Huxley remains probably for me the most preeminent of all the artists. I'm not sure that he lives in a quiet village in Kent, it says now. I'm not sure though that we have necessarily seen all of his finest work there, because a lot of these illustrations, the original ones, have been lost. He mentions this, and that's why you're seeing some of the later iterations of those bits of art rather than the ones that you might be more familiar with. Anyway, there we go. So that's the golden years of Matchbox art by Roy Huxley. It's not a cheap book. It actually retails for £40 in the UK, but it is a beautiful thing, and yeah, I'm very pleased to have that in my book collection. It goes very nicely with my Matchbox kits, I have to say. And I would give that, as a book, I'd give that 10 out of 10, no question, because it's just so nostalgic to flick through those pages and sort of remember these visual images. Fantastic. Brings the best parts of your childhood flooding back, isn't it? Anyway, I hope you'll give me 10 out of 10 with a thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you'll all take care of yourselves, stay well, stay safe, and until next time, thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the near future. Hope you have a great end to 2021 and you have a great start to 2022. Let's hope it's a better year for everybody. Thanks for all your time watching these videos. Hope you enjoyed them. Bye for now.